Okay, wrestling fans, welcome back to the Sports Entertainers Podcast, the exclusive wrestling podcast of the Rose City. I'm Drake Moore, running solo today, but we are pleased to be joined by our next guest in our interview series. He is an all-round combat sports legend. After dominating the ranks of amateur wrestling at Arizona State, he moved on to the professional world of wrestling and fighting. You likely know him as a pioneer of MMA. He is a UFC Hall of Famer and former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. It is my honor to introduce Dan, the Beast, Severn. Welcome to the Sports Entertainers Podcast.
Ta-da!
He made it. He made it, man. Thank you so much. Of course, we want to talk to you because you're going to be coming to our parts pretty soon. In the area here in Windsor, we have a few seminars coming up at Hybrid Training Academy. June 22nd. We'll start off with that and we'll circle back to it. But just to introduce it, what's it going to be like? What's the day going to be like for you? And just kind of take us through the schedule.
All seminars, also be saying every seminar starts off the same, a quick little warm up, give people just a little bit of my background. And then we just simply just jump into it. And I always tell people, ask questions. I go, I'm not here simply just to put out the same old canned routine every time. I'm here because a 2 hour seminar, standard seminars are just basically a couple hours, because anything over that it gets become too much for the mind to comprehend all this. And with kids classes, it's even shorter then, because the attention span is, we have a very, very short attention span anymore because of this little device right here. Yes. And that's where you're starting to see what's the most, I think it's called threads, where it's almost like these 10 to 15 seconds, because people across the globe, they have the attention span of a gnat anymore.
I know. And even doing this thing for 10, 20 minutes could be too long, but we'll see if we get some views.
That's where you look for little clips that you go, Dan Severn said this, or I said that, and that's like, then they might want to click in and watch the rest of the interview. So I get it. I get it.
Oh yeah, I know you'll be good at this, and we'll talk more about it. But you're doing a striking seminar, a ground seminar, kind of wrestling, jiu-jitsu.
It'll be a combination of everything. I usually start on my feet, because I go all physical altercation. Typically start on your feet first, we'll go for on your feet there, and I go into certain elements like closing the distance, takedown clinches, the throws, how to defend takedown clinches, the throws. When you look at, then I'll go into then everything down on the ground. So it's getting the first hour is also on your feet and going through different types of offense, defense, and then the second hour, I just spend down there. Which, as I said, 2 hours, poof, it goes by really quickly.
Yeah, it does.
And especially if they ask any kind of questions, because now it makes it special for them. I'll go into something that deviates into what they're asking about, or this direction. I always tell people I'm a wealth of knowledge, and through having an amateur wrestling career, folk style. The United States is the only country that does folk style. The rest of the world does freestyle or Greco-Roman.
Yeah.
So, the reality was, when I was in high school, I started off in 7th grade doing this. By my 9th grade year, I jumped into freestyle. And then by my sophomore year in high school, I jumped into Greco. So now I'm doing folk style during the season. And then in the summer months, I'm doing both freestyle and Greco. Every weekend going somewhere. And in the fall, I would play football. I love football more than actually anything, but it was a team sport. You had to rely upon 10 other players to do their job. And if they missed a tackle, they missed a block, you lose. And on the wrestling team, the definition of wrestling is it's a team sport based upon individual performances. The team can lose, and I can still go on and do my thing. So ultimately, I chose the sport of wrestling because I control my own destiny. Like I said before, I love the sport of football. Crash, bang, boom, every 20 seconds. I love it.
Yeah. Well, obviously you were made for what you did, man. And this is when you're going to one of these seminars, guys, in Windsor and beyond. It's your time to learn. It's time to learn from a legend who's done it all, not only in the world of MMA or fighting, though, but obviously in the world of wrestling too. As we kind of talk about that, we'll circle all around. First and foremost, I know my cousin Scott. You wrestled here in Border City Wrestling before. Actually, I have a clip I got to show you down at the river. And I don't know, what do you remember about those times? What do you recall about working with Scott or coming down this way at all?
No, I've always had fun with Scott. I mean, he and a couple other Canadian buddies that they would always kind of like roam together. Just so it's all work, but if you can bust each other's chops a little bit, it just makes the work that much more funner. So it's like, even through the couple of emails we had going back and forth, it's like, oh,
Yeah,
I'll bust his chops here and there. Sure.
yeah.
I mean, that's
Why
that's what
not?
life's all about. Yeah.
Why not chirp each other a little bit, right? And Scott, I know exactly what you're talking about with that, with Scott. And another guy that I wanted to mention too, bring up, see if you remember. I mean, going into your UFC days a little bit, UFC five, you in the finals against another Windsor guy, Dave Beneteau. You
Dave Beneteau. Yeah. No,
remember
no,
obviously training with him too, right?
yeah. No, I mean, Dave has been to my maximum training facility that I'm in right now in Kewanee, Michigan before. So he
Yeah.
came out here, and I'm trying to think who was the other person that came in at the time that Dave and I were just schooling these other people because of the thing about in the beginning of the UFC, basically the athletes were categorized as either being a striker. That striker could be a boxer, kickboxer, Muay Thai, Karate, Kung Fu, or you're in that grappler section, judo, jujitsu, and sambo, and or just an American wrestler. That's all it was. Wrestling doesn't teach you striking stuff like that. But the reality is, I always told people that a striker had to be within arm's distance in order to punch, leg distance to kick, knee, elbow. It was always good. I was always good about staying a little bit outside of range. Let them throw something as they pull it on back because you study how do people train? They throw jabs out, they try to throw a power shot, but as they pull it on back, move on in. The moment that you can either clinch them out in the open or jam them up against the cage wall or take them down, once you've done one of those three things, you've neutralized 90+% of their arsenal. And to the grappler, you're just beginning. Ground and pound, when you look at the three biggest ways that victories were secure, especially early on, ground and pound was number one. Very barbaric, but oh so effective. Take your opponent down and bludgeon him somewhere around that head, neck, and face area, making your fist like a club. That was pretty easy thing to teach people.
It's effective. It's effective. It worked,
Yes,
obviously, right? So, I
choke,
mean,
choke, and then chokes were number two, and arm bars
yeah,
were number three. I always tell people if you want to get into a sport, you better understand better understand something about the stats and what are the some of the top quickest ways people are going to try to take you out, and those are the top three.
almost the basics when you look
Yeah,
at it, right? So, and I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I mean, like, it's cool to kind of see how like the paths cross. I got to talk to Dave about this stuff, and he even, he said you got him into wrestling and stuff too, because just right place, right time. Anyone could do this shit, right? So
yeah.
if you give it a try, right?
I just had a phone call conversation just less than a week ago. Again, from another gentleman from the Canada. I was supposed to say Canada,
Yeah, yeah,
and he brought up Dave's name and stuff like that again. And so I just as they would get caught up with him. I mean, I know that Dave is a very successful attorney
yeah,
now and doing
yeah,
different things along those lines. So again, I just told him, I said, wait, if you see Dave again, just tell him I said hi, and I
yeah.
know our paths will cross again because, well, again, I'll keep continuing to do what I do. One of my, I'm a person who sets goals. I literally, when I would tell people, I always hold on. I live out of a planner. I've actually lived out of a planner since my junior year in high school because of how much I was doing in amateur wrestling. I mean, how many high school kids that actually lived out of a planner? Now it wasn't as big and elaborate as the planner I have now, but it used to be just one of those little pocket size type of things. So I knew what summer camps I wanted to go to, what summer tournaments, and I always kept trying to get more experience because during a regulation season in high school wrestling, I might get about 50 matches tops. But then during spring, summer, and part of fall, I would get another 100 plus matches. So by the time I'm a sophomore or a junior in high school, I'm realistically more like a sophomore or a junior in college just by sheer experience of each time you walk on that mat, you learn something else. And that's where I just tell people that there's a there's a physical side of competition, and then there's a mental side of
Oh yeah.
competition. And I think that the mental side is more important than what the actual physical side is. Physical
Oh
side,
yeah.
that happened early in the match when you start to realize I'm getting tired, or in professional sense, I'm getting blown up. Okay. And once you start getting tired in a match, you just start realizing, oh my God, you're not going to be able to perform to the best of your capabilities because you're tired. And
Yeah.
that's when, in professionals, and that's when accidents happen. Out of all the things
Yeah.
I've done, out of all the things I've done in life, being a cage fighter, an amateur wrestler, and a professional wrestler, I've been hurt far worse in professional wrestling than anything else I did. I was hurt. I was hurt second most in amateur wrestling. I always tell people the safest thing I ever did was cage fight.
Well, you did a lot of crazy shit, so there's that
No, I
too,
mean
right?
it's ridiculous when you say that the safest thing you did was cage fight because you're walking
That's
out
true.
there with evil intentions at that point in time. So
Yeah.
it's pretty ironic.
That's cool, man. It's cool to hear. Yeah, always a lesson, no matter every time you step on the mats, whatever the mat may be for. And I mean, we'd be remiss if I don't ask any, professional wrestling questions. I mean, obviously, I know you mostly in regards to wrestling for
Yeah,
your time in the WWF. If we talk about, MMA, that's a whole nother story. But looking back at those times, things that really stuck out to me is the stuff that you did with one of my favorites in Owen Hart. So, another Canadian guy, another
yeah.
good grappler. I mean, what do you remember about working with him? Just as a fan, from fan to fan, I gotta ask that.
Well, I mean, well, yeah, look at. I mean, he came from the Hart dynasty.
Yeah.
Stu Hart. He had his training facility, and I mean, all the great wrestlers that he was producing. It was kind of ironic that I ended up getting a chance to travel to the Hart residence and to see the dungeon because
Well, there's that
they were
match,
well, they
right?
put together together the match where between Ken Shamrock and Owen Hart, and they're down there
Yeah.
as they're down there in the dungeon, and they're looking where they can set up their lights and cameras and microphones, that kind of stuff. And Ken and Owen are trying to put together this match, and the whole time that they're doing that, I'm actually sitting up in the living room and just listening to Stu Hart, and he's asking me questions, and we're just having a great conversation for probably an hour and a half or so or something like that. It was great,
That's
and that
cool, man.
and literally it was like a couple weeks later, I see Owen again at one of the other Raw shows, and he handed me a T-shirt. It was an Owen Hart T-shirt, but he signed it. You know, because I mean, Stu didn't have no shirts himself, but he says my dad never
Oh,
does stuff like this. But he goes, he really enjoyed the conversation with you and signed this
wow.
for you. And I thought, wow, that was a very cherished memento. Yes,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, another legend, many legends around here, but again, as a fan, I had to bring that up. I mean, obviously working with Ken and all the stuff you guys did with the Lions Den matches and stuff like that is what
yeah,
really might stick out for, those old Attitude Era fans. And not only that, man, one of the biggest things I remember, obviously decorated in gold, was yourself, but bringing the UFC title to WWF Raw, like that's never been done before with all this, this guy was a UFC guy, he went to WWF, vice versa, and all that
yeah.
stuff. You're the only guy that's actually had the belt on Raw. Like it's pretty cool.
Well, it was yeah. Well, again, I don't know whose idea it was. I don't know if it was Jim Cornette that volunteered to basically be like my mouthpiece.
Yeah.
I think he actually knew early on that I'm not I'm not the one that wants to go out there to the professional. I'm not cutting all these grandiose type of promos and things of that nature. So I think that they put Jim Ross with me and I'm sorry, Jim Cornette
Whatever.
with me, and I go, what a perfect type of scenario because he's out there saying that Dan Severn, he's a UFC this, he's an NWA that. He's carrying out two of the belts. I got another one around my waist, another one over my shoulder. So the UFC, the UFC was very, very small at that
Oh
time.
yeah. Very new.
And they don't realize, I mean, the internet was not all that big. I mean, even cell phones and stuff like that were
Yeah.
not all that highly developed. So the internet, Googling your opponents, you could not do any of that kind of stuff. So it was, I always tell people that the UFC ought to be sending me residual checks because of all the promotions that I was getting them for, because I'm over there
Yeah.
in professional wrestling. I mean, because I was not exclusive to the UFC. I was not exclusive to the NWA. They all asked me to be exclusive. I go, but are you going to pay me to sit home? And they're like, what do you mean? I go, if you're only doing one show a month, and I've got 3 more weekends I could go and make paydays on. Are you going to pay me to sit home? I'm like, well, no. I go, well, then I'm not going to be exclusive to you guys. I
Hmm.
goes, I'm not going to. I will never
Wow.
do anything to tarnish the belts and stuff like that. Like when
Yeah, yeah.
when I had the NWA belt, I go, I'm not going to go out there and lose to Doink the Clown. I kind of use that as an example.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not going to
yeah.
go out there to lose to Doink the Clown, but in professional wrestling, anything can and will take place. You know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, I mean, it elevates the belt or in a sense,
Yes.
getting that exposure. It's only a good thing. But I mean, you were kind of like taking advantage of that independent contractor kind of thing, right? Like,
Yes.
if I'm not held to that, then why? Why not?
Yeah.
It's only going to benefit you, and if they don't got you, then
Even when I was doing different, when I was going for like work for WWF at the time, I had the opportunity to call the travel something. I could set up my travel. So I would fly into an area earlier, and then I would go someplace at like a martial arts studio, and I might
oh,
do a seminar or speaking engagement. And then by later the afternoon, I would go to the arena and to basically I just sit around a lot of times. And
yeah,
again, I always brought my planner and my cell phone, and I would be sitting in the cafeteria area, kind of over in some kind of a quiet corner. And there's just a lot of people I don't think understood because I didn't join in the typical camaraderie of joking around or going with 2 3 other guys that are going to go hit the gym, then they're going to hit the tanning parlor, and do that kind of stuff. I mean, to me, it's like going, I'm here. This is the business to me. I'm here. I've got my planner. I'm working. I'm actually getting more things, but I flew in early. I go to one. I might go to a high school. I might do a speaking engagement. I might do something with an amateur wrestling clinic. Then I go to the arena. I do my deal with the WWF at the time, and then I afterwards I go to a sports bar and I do another appearance later. So in the 24 hours that was gone, where these guys are making one payday, I'm making 2 3 4 paydays.
well, again, yeah, you're traveling the world, and while you're going around making connections, you already have connections. Take
Yeah,
advantage of that stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
it's a
Now
no
with I
brainer.
mean, yeah, I mean now with the internet, oh, you got everything at your fingertips here. I'm that dinosaur that I'm trying to learn more and more about every time that new posts come out. It's I try to let people start knowing, okay, next month I'm going to be in this area. If there
Yeah,
are people that that have a martial arts gym or a amateur wrestling crew or something like that, reach out to me. Here's my email address. Reach out to me and let's see if we can do something because sometimes the biggest cost is simply the transportation cost to get you there, especially when you
yeah,
start looking at international travel and that.
yeah. It's got to be worth your while too. Right? I mean, it's
Yes,
lucrative, right? So like, why not, right?
yeah. But
Yeah,
I play off a lot of things. Just simply know, like a lot of professionals and promotions, they choked on my price. I go, just reach out to a local high school, reach out to a local law enforcement, reach out to the local martial arts studio. I go, if you're able to make 1 or 2 connections, I go, I'll discount my price to you.
yeah.
So it's
Make it
like,
worth your while.
yeah,
It's a
it's
win-win
my
for everyone,
24
right?
hours is gone. I just simply know that most professionals matches, they're sometime in the evening around that 5:30 to 7:30 start time. And then whenever they end, whether it's no, it doesn't matter what day of the week
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that takes place. So it's kind of
yeah.
going, I could do stuff before and then I could do stuff after.
Never too late. Never
Yeah.
too late, man. And I mean, kind of on that too. I mean, it's a great way to transition into again what you're involved in now, still with wrestling, with grappling. I mean, I'm still coaching with Michigan State, I think. Or where are you involved? What are you doing
Well, I mean,
and helping out?
what I do now, I mean, basically, I'm fully solo. I'm not. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
associated with Arizona State University still. I mean, that's where I went to college at,
right, right.
and I was assistant wrestling coach there for 5 years before taking a job at Michigan State. And so I still love. I have a very deep appreciation and love for the sport of amateur wrestling. I always tell people that if your kid upon high school graduation, if your kid doesn't go into military, hopefully you had him in a sport like amateur wrestling. Why I say that is because you only get out of life what you put into this sport, and it's a very soul revealing sport because when you
Yeah.
walk out there on that mat, you've got nobody else to tag in. You got nobody else to pick up the slack. It's like I said, it's not a team sport. It's mano on mano,
Yeah.
and that's what I like about it. And it really shows the true character. Even as a coach, some of the hardest decisions that I had to say to some of the athletes because there are some athletes that they're great in the practice room. They're King Kong in that practice room. They could beat anybody in the practice room, but the moment you put them up in front of a live crowd, they choke. I mean, literally, they just choke. They get so nervous. And then there's other people that they can't walk across a wrestling mat without tripping over a painted on line. And yet, when you put them out in front of a live audience, it's like dun dun dun. They turn into Superman, and most people fall somewhere in between. So, I mean, even when I first took the job at Michigan State was the laughing stock of the Big Ten, and within a 1 year's time span, I took that program from laughing stock of the basement into the top four in the Big Ten. That was huge, a huge movement
Oh
right
yeah.
there. But I mean, literally, if you saw the office, I had what I said. I had my shrink couch over here. It literally was a couch that had a headset on, and it was all this positive motivation type stuff. I go, you can brainwash people for the bad, the same way that you can brainwash people for the good. And so I just try to brainwash them to the good. And I say that only because of the times that we are in now. But we'll leave that way for a little bit later in the discussion if you want to get into
Yeah.
that. But
Well, I
it's
think it might come up.
but again, I had my psychiatric couch, but then I had two chairs in front of the TV because I was doing breaking down the matches because athletes did not know how to break down the matches to see what their vulnerability is. Why? Okay, why did that? Why did your opponent take you down in this match? You guys see what you're susceptible to. So literally, I did that, and I was also running 2-a-day workouts, one in the morning for 1 hour. All it was for 1 hour, and then the normal practice later that afternoon. The morning practice was not mandatory, but you better be there. And there
I
were a
get
few
it.
people that they didn't show up, and then all of a sudden they would wake up because I would be thumping them on the forehead as they're laying in their bed. They realize, how did coach get in here in the first place? I'm thumping. I go, you missed my practice. Come with me. Go. So it wasn't mandatory, but you better be there.
I
Yes.
get it. I get it. It's a tough sport, man. It's a humbling sport, and again, reasons why we love it. And I mean, before we kind of get back into that with the seminars to wrap it up, obviously you're keeping very busy, not only with grappling. I see once in a while you might get a wrestling booking and doing
Yeah.
your podcast with Don Fry. I mean, that obviously keeps us busy. I mean,
Uh,
I
I
understand
have a
that.
lot of
So
fun with Don Fry because I mean, again, he just well, okay, the name of the podcast called Toxic Masculinity. It's
yeah,
I probably wear that shirt right there, so it's kind of like I get a kick out of doing it with Don because I mean, if anyone ever watches it, he always gets the upper hand on me. It's like I set him on up and he knocks him on down. So
well, that's what it's
he,
all about. Just going back and
yeah,
forth, right?
yep, exactly.
That's fun. And another legend, obviously, people listening will know of you guys and know if you don't know, go check out that podcast. And I mean, Dan, you're coming down here again, June 22nd. I mean, these
Yep.
these podcast things are cool so that we can catch up with UFC and wrestling legends like yourself, and then kind of promote what's coming up next, promote what you've been doing. And again, you're coming down to Windsor. We kind of went through the seminars, what we're gonna be having, but give you the floor. And we were talking before we started recording. You said, wasn't really like a talker guy until they started putting the mic in my mouth after matches and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give you the floor as a kind of like a wrestling question and answer. If someone is thinking about going to this seminar, they're on the fence. What do you got
Okay.
to say to that?
Well, I mean, if they're on the fence thinking that this is going to be a brutal type of a seminar, no, it's not. It's strictly an educational type of a seminar. So it's not like I'm trying to bring people in to see how can I physically break everybody here. No, 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 I had nothing to do with it. This is a brain questions. If you have a weak area in your game, because grappling, MMA is it's such a big sport. You got to look at the biggest sports merger in the history just took place between the UFC and the WWE are now together underneath the same roof. It's like going, that's
Crazy.
a $22 billion industry right now that has exploded there. And
killing it too.
I think I know somebody that has titles in both industries. Wow. Anyway, but it's the thing is, going back to the seminar, it's all educational type purposes. I'll have people of all ages that will come in there, and they might be a little bit concerned. And I go, no, this is all educational, because I always tell them, if you have an injury, because again, you have more and more people. Medicine is really advanced quite a bit to where people have an artificial shoulder joint or artificial elbow joint, an artificial knee, hip, ankle, and I'm like, just you know your limitations. You know whoever you're working out with. I go, but we will rotate different workout partners at different times, because one size fits all techniques do not exist. You might have people that are taller than you, shorter than you. There are some people that actually have a neck, and there's other people that have a tree stump. You can't choke a tree stump, is what I tell them. So again, just learning all the different body types, because I always tell people that I will throw out a 150-pound wrestler against anyone out there, and that 150-pound wrestler will give you the fight of your life. They just don't understand. I would throw a 150-pound wrestler up against a 300-pound football lineman, and knowing that lineman isn't going to go very far, because that wrestler's going to tackle him low and double leg him and block up a hole. So, any football players that had wrestling background, they are so wanted in the NFL. They are.
I've been saying that.
Top.
And I was going to bring that up to you. I mean, you said you love football, and it's like how do these not correlate more? It's crazy. Like if you're a good wrestler, you're going to be pretty much good at anything, right? Athletic wise, I mean, you're going to have some base, right?
Well, again, I say you should be, because wrestling is also it's as I say, it's a mental sport on top of that. It's so you have to have a strong belief in your ability. I mean, especially all the winners. I mean, not everyone's going to win, obviously, but to the winners, when you start going down to like the NCAA tournaments have just completed, stuff like that, and you got Pennsylvania that Penn State just walked away with yet another national title. They've got a quite the dynasty, and a lot of it has to do with the way that the rules have changed just this past year.
This past fall, they keep changing.
This past fall, you can now capitalize, monetize on your name and reputation. So if you're a very high elite senior in high school, a school like Penn State can simply say, Drake, not only are we going to give you a full ride scholarship for the next 4 or 5 years of your career, we're also going to pay you $100,000 over the course of those same 4 or 5 years. And you could be and you go in your first, at the conclusion of your freshman year, you had a Cinderella phenomenal freshman year, to where now you got Iowa University says, hey, Drake, you had such a great year there over at Penn State. We'll give you $200,000 to come over us. I mean, and there's no penalty. You can actually leave in mid-season now. Whereas before there was a penalty that if you relocate from one school to the other, there was like a 1-year sit-out time period. But there's no penalty. There's no slap on the wrist. It's only the programs with the deepest pockets are going to survive. And that's kind of sad, because there's a lot of programs that are going to go bye-bye because of this.
It's going to change the landscape for sure. And I mean, it's that incentive that they didn't have before. I don't know. It's kind of like here nor there. I don't know, but whatever. I mean, it's good to see it grow. And nevertheless, I'm going to see you on June 22nd, because I'm coming out to do some grappling.
Nice.
We're going to help me close the distance.
We'll take care of part 2.
Yeah, we could do a lot, man. Let's do it. And I just want to learn from a wealth of knowledge like yourself, right? So like, how could I pass up on it? And again, man, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really appreciate it.
Again, if anyone wants to check out what I'm doing, just simply go to my website, dansevern.com, or my email address, dan@dansevern.com is the email. Try to make life as easy as possible.
That was easy to find you. Thanks again, man.
Thank you.